Okay, got another Sunday video coming your way. Hope y'all got your quiz questions squared away. So we had a couple of hiccups going on that, and we had a webcam. Just FYI stuff. Proctorial requires that you have a webcam, best of my knowledge. And if yours is not working, uh, it may not let you in. I don't know for sure. Uh, Another kind of an announcement is that week 7 is coming up, and that's when we're going to have our in-person training. And those dates are the 24th, 25th, 26th of August. If you're a student enrolled to the Georgia campus, you need to be there at 8 a.m. in the morning on the 24th of August at the campus where the classes are. And you will be taken care of by the staff down there as far as your in-person training. For those of you enrolled through Oklahoma City, and I think there's only a couple of you, I think Jason Alexander and Jason Osborne are Oklahoma City enrollees, so you get to deal with me. And we need to be in Oklahoma City at the Reno campus uh, by 7 a.m. on the 24th, as we will be going down that morning to visit a website, a construction site way down on South May, where Crossland Construction has some BMPs for construction site erosion control, either in place or they're putting them in place. But we're going to go down there and spend a little bit of time with those guys and kind of see what it looks like, where they put them, what they're called, and see if we can't glean a little information with from that. And I'm trying to find another couple of sites, because that's what I think would help us more than anything else, is to see where they put them and what they put there. And of course, we can look at what we have in place at Oklahoma City uh, field site. Uh, that field site is kind of flat, so there's not much we had to do on the crane side of it. There will be something that we may look at on where we work with the heavy equipment on the dirt side. Uh, we may come up with some ideas that they could do there, because as if you went to the certificate program there, you will remember that the Canadian part of the Canadian River is right there to the north of the field site. So we need to see if it's being protected. And moving along, I thought I would look at a couple of things. Next week is going to be busy for you. I've asked you to do quite a few different things, a little bit different than we've been doing. I want to look at well, let's look at the textbook first, so you'll know where a lot of this is coming from. Because I named it Safety Concerns in Organizational Governing Bodies. I'm not belittling safety. We have more of that coming at us. I didn't want to put a whole lot in this module, because I want to have some time to get ready for you guys coming, having to go to the in-person. For some of you, that'll just be down the street. For some, you may have to fly into Georgia or drive into. But anyway, I didn't want to fill you up with a whole bunch of stuff. Week 7, we'll be getting busy again. It'll have some more advanced things in schematics, and we'll start getting into components, and that's for another video. So I'll try to have something ready by the time we get, I need to get it done for you guys that aren't going on the erosion and control. I'll come up with a plan for that, since some are involved in person, and some of you are not, but you're all in the same 2 classes. So that's something I've got to work out, and I'll get that worked out and let you know what we're going to do. Okay, I got my, I think the book itself, you should be able to see, and if page 583, no, 38, uh, we didn't really touch on this that much, if at all, uh, but there are some organizational bodies are uh, and some are just recommending, some govern, saying this is the way it has to be. You'll come in, you'll be familiar with a couple of them, but I just have an assignment that's based on this information here because these are important. I want you to know they exist and that they are resources for when you become in management. These standards, some are free, not many. Uh, ANSI will charge you a considerable fee for their standards, but you can visit these sites, take a look around, and some you can see. And I'm going to ask you to go there and find out some of the things that may be available. So the first one is it used to be called American Society of Testing and Materials. They governed a lot of things. Uh, and It was a voluntary consensus piece. People would meet, and our subject matter experts would meet and say, "Well, let's we need to do this." Somewhat like they did when they developed standards for the mobile crane. These guys were heavily involved in that, and you crane operators will probably recognize ANSI as the American National Standards Institute. I think it's B30.1, something like that, that governs the standards for operating a crane and perhaps rigging also. But OSHA adopted these standards. So once OSHA adopted them, they become law. Not only is it required or recommended, it's what you got to do. And that all of those standards about that, and even food handling, just tons and tons of standards uh, are not governed but developed by American National Standards Institute. Now, this is a global organization. It's called ISO, but the name is International Organization for Standardization. It's for standardization. It's the world's largest developer and publisher of international standards. ISO is a non-governmental organization, unlike OSHA, comprised of representatives from the National Standards Institute of numerous countries throughout the world. So we'll get back to that. I just want to throw in this guy's no longer in business, but there's one commonly used series of metal angle face connectors that are referred to as JIC, and it's the flanged. I think not the flange, but the the angle surface. They're common fittings, but I have a question asking you to go find what those things look like, and that'll be coming up. And this is SAE, maybe more familiar to you guys that have maybe had a job as a mechanic. These guys do a lot more than you might think. If you were taking this course at a Voltec, I used to work at a Voltec here in southeast Oklahoma. One of the goals would be to get you SAE certified, but that's not where SAE starts or stops. They get involved in hydraulics, and there's all kinds of like tech positions that involve hydraulics, and that's going to be one of your questions, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But you'd be surprised. I think there's 11 different types of certifications that SAE uh, has available for people involved in working with hydraulic systems. Just, I was amazed. I did not know that. But now you're going to know it because it's part of the questions I'm going to be asking. Now, I want to talk about ISO just a little bit. This is what, I don't have this written down, so you can see it. But if you have a chance, write down ISO/IEC 17024 colon 2012. Now, it contains principles and requirements for a body certifying personnel, the requirements to certify a personnel. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is the crane, the mobile crane guys are going through some changes as far as who can be a practical examiner or something to do with you train a student. You can't be that student's practical examiner. Now, I don't want to get too far into that, but some of you guys that are crane operators may know what I'm talking about. But this particular, it's called, I want to say compliant, but that's not it. It's moving everything to international standards, all the things for personnel certification. Now, there was a time when I was pushing us to get a heavy equipment certification, just as we have the mobile crane certification. That entails so much work that, well, in this case, NCCCO had to go through to have a recognized certification. ISO puts forth those steps. Mostly it talks about policies and procedures, whereas ANSI, American National Standards Institute, their role was to put forth the safety standards, the assembly, disassembly, the rigging, a lot of that, the things that you do. Now, ISO focuses on documentation and that kind of things. It has and things like you have to have what's called a firewall dividing your training from your certification. That's kind of what this change in the practical examiner for mobile cranes are dealing with right now. Not sure, but I think that's what's going on. But it originates out of this international standards, International Organization for Standardization. Any kind of certification, personnel certification, has to go by these standards. Now, I may be getting out of bounds by making these statements because there may be some qualifying paragraphs that I don't know about, But by and large, the crane, mobile crane, subpart CC, Cranes and Derricks in Construction, was developed under the auspices of the ISO, and ANSI and OSHA. Then now ISO is not moved in, but wants everybody to do the same thing, no matter where they are. Just like your, what is it? The hazard material thing has become international now. Okay, enough said about that. You will get it. I'm going to ask you to get into that in this week coming up, starting Monday. So again, if you, I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I'm going to ask you to do, just because the directions or instructions may be a little bit confusing. So I'm going to put my textbook aside, and then I'm going to pull up the week 6 that's coming up. It's called Safety Concerns in Organizational Governing Bodies. Let's see, did I put objectives in here? Perhaps. If I didn't, I should. Here's simply what I need you to know. Specific injuries related to pressurized hydraulic system. Now I'm going to be talking, or you're going to be reading about those things. Again, that's on 583, I think. A lot in the neighborhood of that in chapter 22. I believe it's 538. I keep saying 83, somewhere in there. But you'll find a whole section on safety. I'd like for you to read through that. Really don't have any specific questions about these objectives, but to do your assignment, you're going to have to become familiar with some of these objectives. So it's a waste of no one's time. A drink of water is in order. It's been extremely warm in southeast Oklahoma, and I feel like that would be no news to anybody in the continental United States. It's been kind of warm all over. So we have the overview here that has the objectives. Now let me see if I can get back to the modules. This usually works. It won't take me to, there it is. Look at that. Okay, the tailgate is going to be, I don't know if you'd call it interesting, but it's going to be about, I haven't even named it yet, but it's going to be about a safety plan. I'm going to want you to develop a safety plan. I guess just didn't think of the topic, but I'm going to open it up right now, and I want you to see what's inside because it may need some explain. I like this video. You may like it too, but it's all about hydraulic safety. It happens to be, I think, filmed at or filmed by a landfill organization. And I don't know how much you know about landfills, but they have just as much, if not more, heavy equipment operating than most earth-moving operations. And they have big equipment that operate. So let me just go through these directions and I'll try to clarify. The video below is about safety concerns while working with hydraulic systems. I think it focused on a landfill operation. And I say I think because I didn't know for sure because I lost the video and I had to go find it again. But it does apply to a landfill, but it just mostly talks about things that can happen to you when working around hydraulic systems. However, those operations use as much heavy equipment as earth moving. So this is going to be one of those open deals that you may not like. I'm not going to be real specific. So I'm just saying relying on comments from others, maybe, ideas from others, yourself, some of the responses in the discussion, and that means you can talk back and forth about things. I want you to put together a safety plan. If you don't know what that is, that's like almost a safety policy, but it's like specifically for a situation. Like you put together a safety plan if you were a contractor and you were having subcontractors come on board from left and right, and it's not necessarily, you would have your company's policy and then you'd have what relates to subcontractors. So I want you to take all you can look, go out and go find sample safety plans. I don't care, but I want something put together and in tailgate order. So that's why you see there are 3 parts of a safety plan that I found. The first part is general information, so that'll be your initial response. We won't have to go through that. You forgot your third response thing. I hope everybody got that message. That is a costly mistake to forget that second response to another student. And I hope everybody understands the tailgate requirements or rules. So in the general information, I'll let you make most of the decision, but I strongly suggest that while viewing, make notes on preventative measures and include in under this topic. So when I say make notes, it talks about hydraulic fluids, what the mist can do under pressure. It's very flammable and it spreads out. It can penetrate your skin. Rubber gloves, they ain't going to help in many cases. So think about that because you're going to have to put together some preventative measures. I want you to have what happens if. So what I'm wanting you to think about is we don't know what the accident is or the results until it happens. That's the way things are. However, we do know up here what may happen and what we can do to prevent it. So your emergency action plan is like, oh my gosh, the guy just got his hand cut off. So I'm not asking you to one first step is apply first aid measures. I'm not really needing to know, but first aid measures applicable to lacerations or things like that. But be sure you apply first aid measures. What else would you do? Call 911, right? Yeah. And if they're not breathing, take first aid steps. Just don't, you don't have to get real thorough, but that's what I want. I want you to be thinking about what you need to do if you're in charge of a construction site. And that may happen quicker than you may think. We're hurting for people that know things out there. So, but you would, and they said you need to put a safety plan together. I don't want your first response to be, well, I've never even heard of a safety plan. You see, when you get on a job, I want you to know something as well as be able to do something. And as we go along, we'll talk more about that too. And just as important to getting a job is knowing how that guy, HR guy is going to say, tell me what you did. I want you to have answers. I want him to say, that's enough. I get it. But don't sit there, well, I don't know for sure. We did some of this. Be real sure you know what you did. And if you need help putting it into words, I can help you. So back to the emergency acts plan. That's just like, what are you going to do if if something happens? And I think I put it like, oh, if it is this, do this. That kind of information. If you get your hand cut off, these are the things you do. If you get burned, what do you do? Because it kind of talks about that on that page 538, the safety deal. It talks about some of those things. You can get some answers there, and how to and go online. You should always have a tab whenever you're working on your computer. You have your Google tab up there. I do. When I come across a word or something that I'm not familiar with, I'm not going to let that stop me. I want to make sure I understand it. So, same for you. Uh, then, what kind of report would you like to see? So incident, accident, accident, incident. Incident is like the guy had a close call. Incident is you bumped into something. Maybe that's an accident if there's damage done. I really don't know, and maybe each company has their definition, but incidents were usually non-injuries. Accidents involve damage to equipment and or injury. So, finally, feel free to talk about all of this uh, in your discussion. Keep it a discussion. I did this right here so I could get 3 separate responses out of you. I sent you all a rubric that I grade by. I hope that helped. And if you didn't get that rubric, a rubric is just like tells you standards of what that you want from that student. Mine are like uh, intellectual engagement. If you do not know what that means, look it up. What do I mean by that? Being on time. Your first initial response should be submitted Tuesday, no later than 11:59. It says so in the requirements. If you haven't, I have those requirements myself, not stapled but paperclip to my lampshade. I want to make sure I can look at yours and say he had his in by that time, and I can look at my calendar and say, well, he or she had it in on time. Uh, I mean, there's some, like I said, there's the page number 542 that has a dozen different kinds of accidents and things that might happen that you could use. Again, I, I want, like I've gotten some answers. Uh, I wish I'd have thought about it. I would have copied them down. I have them somewhere, but I'm not going to take up your time and find them. But I got an answer. Like one answer was like, uh, describe uh, force multiplication. The answer I got was using something little to do something big. Guys, you know, it's a good thing I'm not in charge because that's insulting. Is it right? Yeah. it's kind of right, but I don't want you to leave here thinking that's the way you explain that. And I've told you to some of you in your comments, when you read this any article and we're having a tailgate, we're talking about that article, or I ask you essay questions about an article to describe something. I want you to do it like you're teaching me, like you're the boss and you're wanting me to understand what this article is saying. That's the kind of answers I need from you. And if we get overboard and it gets like you're asking too much, just say I think you're asking too much. I don't think I am, but I do not want to overload you. But I want you to give me as much information as you can about anything I ask about, you know. And and if you're in a hurry, you're not going to be able to do that. So if you start getting like something's happening, you got to feed the dog and the cat, and that wasn't in your plan, and you need some space, time, or what? Let's talk about it. Let's don't cut short your learning potential by rushing you, but let me know that you are learning, and the way to do that is to be able to explain what you just read. I think I covered pretty much all I wanted to cover. I wonder if I can take a snapshot of something without blowing us up here. Of course not. Best quit while we're ahead, I guess. So that's all I had. Again, I'm going to come up with something, and as I was doing this video, believe it or not, I'm sure you believe it, I don't know if I've had this situation before where I have the same students not doing the same thing. Like some of you guys in hydraulics don't have an in-person session. You guys in soils and erosion, you do have an in-person session. So I got to work that out, because whatever the hydraulic people do, the guys that are in hydraulics but are on in-person training, I'll have to figure something out, because they've got to continue to keep up with whatever the hydraulic course is doing. So I'm going to stop there. I feel I'm rambling, but now you have a video. Shoot me questions if you don't understand something, or if when we start this Monday that you get confused, just get in touch. Anyway, I'll be seeing some of you for the first time in a week or so.